Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Afterlife podcast. This is your host, Bijay Chilakuri. On this show, we bring you stories of those who have had NDEs or near-death experiences. The term NDE was coined by Dr. Raymond Moody in 1975. It is referring to those experiences that people have had when they have died clinically and left their bodies, and they talk about the things they have seen and heard and experienced. So we bring you those stories. In today's episode, we're going to do something just a little bit different. My guest today is going to talk about how she has used all of the wealth of knowledge from near-death experience research that she has conducted and applied that to parenting. So today I am going to welcome Kathleen Scherek. She's an award-winning educator, author, and sacred parenting mentor. She has been a top international consultant to Fortune 200 companies, and she is also the former University Associate Dean and has advised the Walton and Gates Foundation about innovation in education. She's co-founder of a Montessori school that has served thousands of families for decades. She's a founding board trustee of several foundations, and she is here with us today to share her wisdom and her knowledge, not just about near-death experiences, but also how that applies to parenting. Welcome to the show, Kathleen. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Pooja. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too. I cannot wait to see what we're going to glean from your wisdom and all of your research and all of your hard work, Kathleen. And before we dive into what you do, which I know that I'm very curious to learn about the sacred parenting and all of that, I actually want to just backpedal a little bit and ask you how you got to this, and especially all the research that you've done with near-death experiences. So, what sparked your curiosity with NDE stories?
Well, the NDEs are things that, to me, we can think of life in stages. We can think of before life, we can think of afterlife, we can think of present life, or we can actually consider the spiritual realm, our soul, as never ending, as eternal. And we plop down every once in a while into embodiment to have some experiences. And so there is really no before and after, it's all one continuum. And that kind of perspective, I've been really fortunate to be able to glean in part from the history of my family. My family goes back to the Masons, to some very spiritually anchored kinds of approaches to life. My own mother, for example, was raised, I think her grandfather was a Methodist minister. So she was Methodist, she was Presbyterian, she became Baptist, she became Roman Catholic in order to marry my father. And in the meantime, and all of that, I would come home from school after this in my little uniform from the Catholic school, and she would have just read a book on astrology. Hey, let's go look and see what your astrology is. Another time I'd come home, she'd just read a book on palmistry. She wanted to read my hand. What does my hand look like? Another time it would be handwriting analysis. Here, write something, let's analyze it. So that kind of seeking of alternative ways that inform your way of being in the world, I'm so grateful for. It's like an openness. There's a seeking mentality that is not seeking because of lack or because I don't know enough, but seeking out of curiosity. And this really came to a head in terms of near-death experiences and the impact on me when I went to a spiritual conference and Danian Brinkley was speaking. Danian, as you may know, has died, well, 7 times that I know of. Maybe it has been more now, I don't know. But he was speaking on stage, and he's quite something. It was a spiritual conference, and he had quite the deleted expletives going, because he is just like, he doesn't make any excuses for himself after he's left the world a couple of times. But he said a couple of things, Pooja, that have impacted the way I live my life. And one of them was just so very simple. As you know from all of your interviews, there are, even though everyone's NDE is unique to them, there are often patterns and some commonalities of general experience. And one of those is kind of a life review. And he was sharing with us from the stage that he had, in part of his life review, he saw that that somebody had walked past him on the sidewalk, and he had like groaned, or he made a negative remark, or he had some kind of a negative context to that person walking by. And in his review, he saw, like a black energy going towards that person. I believe the story goes, and if he ever were to hear this, he would correct me probably, but he took away from that he could send a color, number one, and to anybody, number two, when he came back into his next life. And so he did that very consciously. And Pooja, that affected me. I'm not kidding. When I'm driving in a car and people are along the sidewalk in whatever state they're in, I send color. I'm sensitive to color. It has impact to me. I send pink. I send violet. I might send green, but pink is the one that I love. And so to me, to know that when I am no longer in this body, I may have a review of my life, and I'm hoping that there's more of those pink colors going to people than other kinds of colors. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of leaving the world in a way, coming back and using what he saw in his life review was very instructional to me. And, I don't have to have an NDE to learn from it. So to me, even every time I talk about this, it truly has impacted my life. Whether I am, you can say a kind word to someone, but if you're not around them, if you don't know them, if you're not in conversation with them, you can send them energy. And everything is energy. And that's part of what I teach and what I mentor around with sacred parenting. It's one of the key principles is on this whole journey of life, which is a journey of discernment. And especially if you have a role with children in your life. And my specialty is working with young children, preconception to age 6, as they're onboarding into life. To me, the ability to send energy in a beautiful manner can be effortless. It doesn't have to be a big, huge deal. So I've learned so much from that's Danian doesn't know it, but he has impacted my life, and I share this story with so many other people. And maybe one other person or other people will take something away from it that's useful for them. Not everybody sees colors or feels colors, but if you can, if your sense is more hearing, if your sense is more taste or smell, you can use all those senses to send love. It's just a beautiful thought, even.
Yes.
About all of that. Yes. So any case,
Absolutely.
I think, and the experiences of those that have gone through NDEs are very instructional to us. And if we have children in our lives, to me, to have the perspective of who is this child before me? Do I need to know, what do I need to know about them that isn't being presented to me by them directly? Because in the ages that I deal with, they're not talking to you. Energy is their first language. They sense
I
energy.
love that. I
they
love that.
feel it.
Yes, I'm writing this down. This is amazing. Energy
Wow.
is their first language.
Absolutely. And if you go even bigger, consciousness is really where they live. But it's also, energy is their first language. So the more that we as carers, parents, aunts, uncles, teachers, educators, doulas, midwives, therapists, nannies, any connection we have, a bus driver, if you're driving a bus filled with children, the energy that we carry affects them. And there's
Mhm.
so much research by Heart Math that's now been around for 35 years or so, is one of the organizations that has really been rigorous about how people can entrain with each other, and children are especially susceptible to this. They're especially open. Entrainment meaning whatever energy I'm in when I'm around children that I'm caring for
Mhm.
is immediately felt by them, whether they can voice it or not.
Mhm.
So it gives a whole different perspective a little bit to, well, I'm speaking as an educator as well, Pooja. Many times classrooms are based on how well we can manage a classroom, like classroom management,
Mhm.
instead of really what are the pure learnings that are going on, because each child learns in a different manner. They intake the world in their own way.
Mhm.
Same with parents, grandparents, therapists who work with children. To be aware of how the children are intaking the world
Mhm.
is a critical skill. And this entrainment that we have, when we're aware, we
Mhm.
can use, there's tools that deal with the vagus nerve that can calm us,
Mhm.
so that when a child is having a tantrum,
Mhm.
we stay in a calm mode,
Mhm.
and eventually they can entrain with us. In other words, become peaceful as well, as
Mhm.
opposed to us, oh, it's a tantrum, oh my gosh, it's in public, what am I going to do, I'm embarrassed, instead of us in training to the tantrum. So energy and the management of that, not just the management, but the mastery of it, really, it's like it's a
Mhm.
lifelong skill building. And to understand what people's experiences have been when their body has ceased to function.
Mhm.
There's research that shows, and I'm in love with the book, and I'm going to show it to you. The Carmens, Neil and Elizabeth Carmen, have done this phenomenal gathering and summary of research, not just for NDEs, but for uh, young children, talking about their experiences before they were conceived, before they were born, all of these things. And one of their books is Babies Are Cosmic.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just so wonderful. And they have summarized research in this book and in other places as well. I've also read, there's so many books out there now. Well, I want to say a lot, but there are treasures of books.
Mhm.
Wayne Dyer and his assistant, Dee Gurnis, I think, wrote a
Mhm.
book called Memories of Heaven. Jim
Mhm.
Tucker has a couple of books out. All his is very deep research on the NDE experiences of children.
Mhm.
And we know Raymond Moody, of course. I love what the Garmans have done, because they've summarized it in this beautiful book, and they do take research from Jeffrey Long, who was an oncologist, and
Yes.
he has studied children and their experiences, and with NDEs. And of course, you may know, and your viewers and your listeners may know of Heaven is Real, the book. It turned into a movie with Colton. And, I just love that these things are becoming more mainstream to talk about.
Yes. Yes.
It's just
Absolutely.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it matters. It matters. If we really, and more, um, many of us are seriously taking steps to embody the whole notion that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience or a human experience. And when we do that, the realms of spirit before and after our current body is what really matters. So these beautiful conversations that children have, and I'd be happy to read you a couple of really short ones. They're just so sweet, Pooja. And
Yes.
that they connect us, to the spiritual realm, which is
Mhm.
really what the NDEs, in
Mhm.
my opinion, one of the big reasons they may occur, of course, it's different for each person, but is to remind us of who we really are. And
Yes.
that sacred parenting is all about seeing the child for who they really are. It's bridging science and spirit to see the child for who they really have come here to be, not who we necessarily want them to be, or, also who we were not able to be in some cases. So the whole point of kind of resolving our own psychology before and while we are being parents, we're also parenting ourselves in so many ways. But that whole notion of the spiritual realm matters. So I just wanted to share that what the Garmans have done is they pulled Jeffrey Long's research into, and they say between children who are this is my term, I specialize in children who are onboarding into life. And I don't think they onboard at birth and in a single moment. I truly believe there's enough evidence to show us with science, neuroscience, quantum physics and all, and also spiritual teachings, that children are onboarding for 7 years. And maybe longer. I call them 7 years of sacred, starting 1 year before birth. So that's 3 months before conception. And then right around age 6 or 7, children step into what's called the reasoning mind. They become, they could become argumentative. They now have opinions about things. They have their own viewpoints, and they're gathering data, and they're quite assured of themselves. And so they are stepping into more of the left brain. And if you know anything about Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor and her experience, my stroke of insight and all, the difference between the left and the right brain is quite dramatic. The left brain is practical and helps us work in the world. The right brain, and I'm very simplistic about this, but the right brain is really where the children are living for these early years of life. And so when I say energy is their first language, that's exactly what's happening with the right brain. Jill Bolte Taylor, who, as you may well know, is a, I believe, neurosurgeon even, who had her own stroke and knew what was happening the entire time. And one reason her story has stuck out to me is that, again, something I learned from that I also mentor and teach others around, is she discovered she could feel when she was beginning to recover, she could feel the energy of the physicians, the nurses, the assistants, the relatives who were coming into her room. And she had a sign posted on her room, outside her room, right inside the door: please be responsible for your own energy. And so isn't that something that we as parents, as grandparents, as educators, as therapists, as pediatricians, those who care for young children, especially when we're caring for young children, to be mindful of what energy we bring in the moments we're with them.
Yeah, absolutely, Kathleen. To your point, the first thing I want to tell you is the color pink that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The minute you got on, I look around you and I was like, oh, I feel so pink. I'm wearing blue, but I was feeling pink. So you succeeded in sending that energy to me. And I don't know where I read this. I read somewhere that it's the color of unconditional love. So
I believe that. Yes.
that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then you touched on several things that are very, very close to my heart. I have so many thoughts, and I'm trying to write things down fast because I'm learning from you. I love listening to you because this is the thing, right? We learn so much when we talk to each other. One of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is I do want to start having these conversations and it feel normal, and not something out there or woo-woo. And a lot of the stuff you're saying, it just simply makes sense. With children, they live so much in that space, like you said, the pure consciousness space, and they are affected by us. I remember when my children were little, I did not have all this knowledge. I did not have all this awareness. I was working full time trying to take care of them, and I was stressed. And the more stressed I got, they got wilder and wilder. It was my husband who noticed the pattern. He's like, you don't understand. When you're stressed, they get worse. When you're calm, they're not having a tantrum. So, instead of judging them for bad behavior or trying to correct bad behavior, trying to understand if I'm causing it, and of course, I wasn't
Yes.
aware. So that was a tough thing, but now I know. Now they're much older, but now I know. So
Well, and the beautiful thing, Pooja, is when we start to understand the quantum field, quantum physics, the non-local mind, and all of this, and Larry Dossey, a very well respected medical doctor who was a deep skeptic of non-local mind. And non-local mind would be, for example, what is the power of prayer? How do you know that it even works? How do you know if it works? Why would
mhm,
you say a prayer if you don't know it works?
mhm,
There's faith is one thing, but what about data? And so Larry, decades ago, embarked on research and
mhm,
has been able to show and prove the power of prayer, which is basically if I'm here and I'm praying for someone in Australia,
mhm,
how do I know that it works? And the documentation is irrefutable. And so the power, we know more and more about this in terms of quantum field. There's,
mhm,
I teach about family fields, for example, and what I want to share with you is one thought to consider is that because so many parents say to me, oh, if I only knew this when my children were young, if I only
mhm.
knew this,
Yeah.
you know what? You knew exactly what you knew when you knew it, and your children knew it as well.
Mhm,
And if we can consider that children may be part of a family unit that is destined to be, not fated to be, like set in stone, but it can be part of destiny for us all. If we
mhm,
consider that we may have had mutual choice in choosing each other for whatever reason. Um, some of the beautiful stories of these young children by the Babies Are Cosmic book point out exactly that. Can I read you something?
Yes, please,
Let me
Kathleen, go
just
for
see
it.
if I can, um, and this is, um, they point out that there's 5 things that are common between children who have pre-birth and preconception memories
Yes.
and NDE experiencers. And the first one is that there is light and heavenly realms that they talk about.
Mhm,
Another one is that there are angels of some sort that seem to appear. Another one is there's some kind of a staircase or a tunnel that's involved, which seems to indicate maybe there's an ascension or a descension, that there's a presence of maybe a religious figure, a number of children, and this could be that a number of children have talked about Jesus, for example.
mhm.
And sometimes there's reunions with loved ones, but some of these children are, here's a little story. Here's Jennifer. She's talking about her Tyson, her son. When I was 7 months pregnant with Tyson, oh, sorry, the Catalina, the little older child, she was 5. She said, Mommy, how did the baby get in your tummy? Well, God put him there, I said. This is Jennifer talking. Well, the baby must have needed to grow for a little bit to turn into a human because when you were in heaven, you were a ball of light and I saw you. This is related by mom. Another one. 2-year-old Tia says to her mommy, did you know my name before I was born? Well, mommy says, of course I did. I chose it when you're in my belly. Well, I knew yours too, because before I was in your belly, I was just light and colors and I saw you looking up at me. I chose you to be my mom. And to this day, Tia is 5. She still talks about being a rainbow. These stories
Wow.
are just so cute. Um, here's stories about a 2-year-old Hannah saying to her mommy, Jesus was holding me and he pointed to you and he said, that's your mommy. We had not been talking about Jesus. There was nothing about Jesus on television. I don't have any pictures of Jesus in our home. I asked more about it, but she just kept playing with her animals. Children, there's so many stories and
Oh,
they're
man.
heartwarming and they're heart opening. And when
Mhm,
we open to that, as in my case, for example, we're talking about caring for young children or any children. Um, 2 things. It's never too late. Our children could be in their 40s, and it's
mhm,
never too late to work with the spiritual side of our family. When we embrace a journey of discernment and open to things like the possibility of soul agreements that we may have, either before we're in embodiment or after or during. Are there some soul agreements that may be at place here to open up to the curiosity of who is our child, who's the child before us? I've been a teacher in the classroom, and it's so magical to see each child express themselves for who they are. You know, if we unintentionally get in the way of that, our own awareness would be good, because we, you know, for goodness sake, when my children, I had 3 children under the age of 5, and I was a single mom traveling for work, and it was something. It was something. And every parent has their scenario that they experience. I gave my children permission to say to me, "Mommy, I don't like the way you said that." And then the antidote was that we would literally jump around like a Mexican jumping bean and shake it off. Way before Taylor Swift had this big, huge hit of a song, and before it became really common knowledge in therapy, that shaking off really can change your energy. So we can involve our children. We can involve them at the younger ages. We can involve them at whatever age to help us just be better people.
Yeah. Those stories you shared, it just warms my heart. And I'll tell you the biggest thing about children, they have no filters.
Yes.
So they will say it like it is, and they're
Yeah.
not thinking how to make it sound better or how to say it so that people believe them, or there's none of that. So
Especially the young ones. Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. And you know, when you were talking about that, another thing that popped in my head, Kathleen, because I see, you know, so many people have so much, you know, with religion, and people having differences about that and not agree with each other. It was Jesus who said, unless you become like a little child, you shall never see the kingdom of God, because the kingdom of God is that pure consciousness, that pure love, right? And children don't need, they don't, that's why they don't need religion, honestly, because they're already so connected.
Well, they really are. Their essence is pure. And if you think of a child, no matter what's happening in front of you, whether it's your own child, whether it's a grandchild, whether it's a child in the grocery store that you're watching, whether it is a child in your classroom, whatever circle you're in that has a child in your sphere of influence, to be aware of not judging that child based on behavior. You know, much of our interactions and our teachings and our certifications and all is all around how to manage behavior.
Yeah.
Well, behavior is like it's a symptom. It's like the last thing. Let's go upstream in the process. One thing that I've learned through all my corporate life is go upstream in the process. And if you go upstream in life, it goes to the early years, and it goes to conception and even before conception, in terms of thought forms, even in terms of emotionality, that could be used in the creation process. And not that, any case, yeah, that is really important and instructive for ourselves to be curious enough and self-aware enough to say, let me see that in myself. You know, it's Carl Jung that pointed out to us all that whatever irritates us in someone else is likely something in our own psychology that needs to be looked at.
Yes.
So that's quite instructive, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Even with young children, we tend to think, you know, that we want their behaviors to be good. Say thank you, go hug, you know, Uncle Bill, whatever it might be. We're instructing them all the time. Our children are not here to be compliant to us. Our children are here to develop into who they're here to be. They have a divine plan, a divine purpose. The beautiful thing about NDEs is they can give us a glimpse into how to connect into that divine purpose earlier. So we don't have to have an NDE to be reminded of it.
to be reminded of it. That is beautiful,
Yeah.
Kathleen. And where something you said, and it made me think, where children are affected by our energy. I think if we slowed down and got curious and plugged into their energy, right? Probably there will be a lot of learning moments. Probably there will be a lot of those NDE moments. Do you know where people they leave their bodies, they experience those things? But sometimes, because when I was a teacher in a classroom, I was an assistant teacher for toddlers. And some of my most spiritually enlightening moments was
Yes.
those 3 years.
Yes.
Sometimes I used to just watch them when they were sleeping. That's all I did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had too many epiphanies. So sometimes I think, even without having to die and leave your body, just being in that energy field with them, it can really bring us into that space where we can reflect and learn so much from them. So
Well, I love that you're mentioning that because it really meant that you were touched. You were
yeah,
touched and you were open. And in those moments, you were able to let whatever stresses were occurring in your life, be somewhere else,
yeah,
be somewhere else.
yeah.
And, sometimes we can talk to our stresses in that manner. Can you just go sit over in the corner there while I go about my day for a little bit?
Mhm, mhm,
We undervalue things with children like silliness and playfulness. We
mhm,
undervalue those
mhm,
um, in terms of energy creators, energy detractors, energy resets, like
mhm.
to reset um, an energy that might have gone awry in another direction, whatever it might be, that if we can stop and be silly about something, children will zap right into that silliness and the rest of it has been taken care of, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So it's uh to be like a child, to be
yes.
like a child.
To be like a child. I
Yes.
that's definitely something. And I don't know the person who said this, so I'm there's a quote that comes to mind, but I have no idea who said it, or I don't remember. Give me a child for the first 7 years, and I will show you the man.
Oh,
So we it's going right back to what you said about the first 7 years,
well,
right?
it is an important part brain wise. It's an important part emotional development wise, and all those kinds of things. It doesn't mean, however, that things um, uh, are
And
set in stone.
yes.
It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that things are set in stone,
Yeah.
but when we're aware of patterns of our own during that crucial time, we are more able to be available
Yeah.
to our children. We're
Mm-hmm.
more able to, there's so many labels these days, Pooja, about parenting and raising children. Um, I really, I do not embrace,
Mm-hmm.
and I urge people to just be a
Yeah.
custom parent, like
Mm-hmm.
customize your parenting to your child, with your child.
Yes.
And you've got helicopter, you've got lawnmower, you've got eggshell parenting, you've got gentle parenting, you've got all kinds of, and we don't need labels. In the TikTok generation and all that we're doing, we're looking for quick ways to describe things, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for like getting a notion quickly, and yet we get stuck on labels instead of to see a child clearly for who they really are
Yeah.
involves a number of things. And when they're here for their own divine purpose on the planet, and they're in our sphere of influence in whatever way, they might be a neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
they might be a niece,
Mm-hmm.
we have a role in that child's divine plan on the planet. And discerning what that role is,
Mm-hmm.
how we can assist that child to be uniquely who they are, is to me one of the most powerful, beautiful responsibilities that we can have.
And thank you so much for saying that, the part about customizing it, because sometimes my daughter would tell me, well, how come you had this rule for me, but not for him? And I have to tell her because he's not you,
Yes.
and it's just, and I know talking to people that have had, multiple kids, sometimes you wish that each kid came with their own manual because
Of
you think
course.
you know after the first one, but know the second one turn around and be completely different, right? So
Yes.
thank you for
So
saying.
really the instructions of the manual for each child is probably one phrase: see me.
I love that.
It's
I love
probably that
that.
simple, but the understanding of the manual is not. We've got to be in our own point of awareness in order to embrace it. I
Yeah,
use the word see and say that some people are not visual, so it's sense. It's really sense me for who I am.
for who I
And
am. Yeah.
yeah, all of the senses, and even many people with NDEs experience multiple senses
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
And their children increasingly in my experience seem to be coming in with more senses. There's some research that shows we not only have 5 senses, but we may have 27 or 39. It's something in the it's
Mm-hmm.
multiple digits. And they include things like clairvoyance,
Mm-hmm.
clairsentience,
Mm-hmm.
clairaudience, things like this. What if we were to as our child is onboarding, as we're pregnant, or our own adult child is pregnant, or there's a pregnant teacher in the classroom, whatever it might be, what if we tuned into more of those senses
Mm-hmm.
now instead of waiting for them to appear? I wonder if we'd be more cognizant of them earlier,
Mm-hmm.
because the children, the stories that they tell, they're all connected there. Children come to us whole. This is part of what I teach. It's a little different. They don't come to us to be formed by us. They come to us to learn, no question,
Mm-hmm.
but they also come whole. So part of our responsibility is, who are you in there? And how can I help shepherd you to live fully who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really are a shepherd. We really are, whatever metaphor works for a particular person. It might be a gardener tending
Mm-hmm.
to a garden for children. We might be an explorer. We might be a scientist
Mm-hmm.
experimenting. I
Yep.
mean, life is a big experiment. Parenthood is a
Yes.
big experiment. Childhood is an experiment, and that's the
Yeah.
fun of it.
Yep. The trial and the error.
Yes, yes,
You,
yes.
you kind of have answered the question that I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, what are your top takeaways for parenting? And I think you've touched upon some of those, but are there other things that you would like to share with us, in terms
Well,
of either for NDE stories, or for parenting, anything that comes to your mind?
the whole idea of life being a journey of discernment, to me, that summarizes, and then there are many different keys in there that I speak about in what I teach and what I mentor around. But if we keep in mind that we're discerning every moment, and keep that awareness, that we're on the road. Then we're on the road. If we otherwise had the notion, well, I'm here, I need to have all the answers, I need to solve all these problems, we start closing off, and it's not a journey of discernment. Dr. Gladys McGarry is one of my dear friends. She's been a dear friend of our family for 50 years. She turns 104 this year. And I have interviewed her several times, available on my YouTube channel at the Sacred Child Institute. But she has a beautiful phrase. I quote it often: life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. And
Mhm.
when we are pressed to solve problems all the time, I mean, you have an idea of what my week has been like.
Yes.
With a tree falling down where it's not supposed to fall down, all these things. You have to have you have to live in the practical world. We're human beings. We have practical issues to deal with. And also, life is a mystery to be solved. And so if we can stay in that wonderment of it, which
Mhm.
NDEs often jolt people into, remember the wonder, remember the enchantment, remember the light. that we come from and that we go back to, if we can keep that in mind, whatever tools we have at our disposal or can cultivate, in my experience, for me, I need to cultivate them, and they have to be things I do regularly. And then once you do them regularly, they become so habitual, you don't even think about it. You get in a scenario and you're like, well, there's a beautiful thing to be grateful for in this horrible seeming turn of events. I wonder when I'll see what that beautiful thing is.
Mhm.
And until I see it, I will stay in that place of gratefulness for it. So
Mhm.
that whole gratitude as a part of the journey of discernment
Mhm.
matters as well. I think that, if we keep in mind that life is, as NDEs show us, I mentioned some of my background and spiritual development of my family, and also that many of my family have lived across religions. We're not religious, we're spiritual, and many people are now. But Buddhism, Hinduism, there are many things that I have embraced from those. And one of them is, or one of the concepts that is not the do unto others as you would have do unto you, is kind of a statement about karmic scenarios. And so when there are bumps and hiccups along the road, whatever journey we're on with children, it's a part of it. We're not here to smooth out, to make sure there's no bumps, to make
Mhm.
sure there's no hiccups. That's not our role,
Mhm.
I would suggest. And to also keep in mind that the child has a dharma, we have a dharma, and how the fascinating piece is watching the child unfold and how this karma dharma weaves itself in our lives with our
Mhm.
children.
Mhm.
That's the
Mhm.
beautiful part. So thank you for the whole conversation around this, and for being
Thank
open to
you.
all these notions. And it's just
I
so much
love,
fun.
I just love talking to you, Kathleen. Every time I learn something. And and that brings me to my very last question. I know you have a website. I know that people can probably connect with you there if they were interested in your services.
Yes.
So is that the best way to reach you, is through the website or
KathleenScherek.com.
chat?
Yes, that would be
Yep.
the best. I mentor, one-on-one. I'm doing more mentoring of small groups. I have a Sacred Child Summit that I run as well. And it's so much fun it's just so much fun. If you want to hear quantum physicists talk about parenting, I mean, I do. And so
Are you going to run one this year, later this year? Are you going to have
um,
another summit?
we'll have to see what pieces come together, because
That's
each I've had one already, and each time that we try it, something else goes another direction. But we will be having more, and it's just so much fun to
Thanks. So
relate all these beautiful learnings in life, spiritual, practical, scientific, indigenous, all of these, to those early years in particular. And then to also remember, it's never too late. It's never too late
yeah,
to address
I,
these things with our children, with our inner child, with our own inner child, and with others in our lives. Thank you, Pooja. This is it's been
thank you.
wonderful to be able to share these. I always enjoy our conversations. I didn't let you talk too much this time, did I,
No,
Bill?
I didn't want to. I am here to learn, and I'm sure you have a lot to teach. And
Uh,
I just love how it flowed. So thank you so much, Kathleen.
I learned from you too. Thank you, Pooja. Grateful to have you in my life.
Me too.